So, after apple picking, the second poem we're looking at, straddling the other end of existence, where a man is giving away all his cares, wants, and work habits to slowly descend toward a death. In after apple picking, of course, we start with the moment where the persona has finished his work, my too long pointed ladder toward heaven still, reminding us, of course, of the purpose of our life, the work ethic, the desire to work toward purpose and reason, heaven here, that religious metaphor, that Christian ethos, that very traditional ethos of what hard work is. And of course, then we get the small moment of regret of the barrels that haven't been filled, and of course the barrels that never were filled because he didn't know what was around there. Apples I didn't pick upon some, though. Things he hasn't come across, things that are left undiscovered, I suppose, is the best way of describing it. But I am done with apple picking now. A little lamentable phrase, a sort of slow, easy piece of language, very similar to, as it's been pointed out to you, Leah saying, I'm done with my life. I want to unburden, crawl toward death. I'm done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night. Nice little metaphor there. It's interesting that we get the word essence of winter sleep is on the night. That gives us a sense that this is something that can be felt or smelt by the persona. It's something that is known. The body itself is feeling the change, which is interesting. The scent of apples, and we get the reminder of the sense of smell here, with the sense of apples is inside that essence of winter sleep. My life's purpose and work surrounds me. I'm drowsing off. I cannot rub the strangers from my sight. I got from looking through a pane of glass. I skimmed this morning from the drinking trough and held against the world of hoary glass. So this image of his life sort of placed into one framed concept or purpose. He looks back and the idea of what memory being almost a still picture and at his life. But now he's turning toward this strange sleep. And he doesn't exactly describe what it is. People might say, oh, he's going toward death or whatever, but is he going more into a sort of a dotage, into an old age? Again, ambiguity, which is a nice way in which to sort of construct your thinking around poetry. It melted, and I let it fall and break. There's this sheet of ice. Okay, this sheet of glass. Sorry, well, actually, sheet of ice on the pane of glass. That very loud, crunching sound. I let it drop away. I let all that care, memory, concern drop away. I let all my stress, all my ambition, I let it all fall and break on the ground. But I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell. So I'd already moved into this last phase of my existence, into this strange sleep and into this very strange dream. These magnified apples appear and disappear, stem end and blossom end, every fleck of russet showing clear. The apples themselves, the description very clear, quite easy to pick up on the fact that he's describing these apples in exceptional detail, showing that his life and his memory is not fading. He is not going into some kind of inability to think anymore. He brings his life's work into his sleep, and the detail is magnified. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of a ladder round. Here we have, of course, that physical change that the body has made due to his life's work and due to work. That the world has imprinted itself on him in every way, on his soul and on his body. I feel the ladder sway as the boughs bend. I can feel that that change that I caused when I was on that ladder, cutting the apples down and the tree moving backward and forward, and the ladder moving back and forward. I can feel that way in which my work transformed things. Excuse me. But I've had too much. And I keep hearing from the cellar bin the rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. The work continues without me. The work goes on. Life goes on. I must give it away. I am not singularly as valuable as what I thought I was. I was part of the cog in the machine. This is an interesting discovery for this persona in that way, because I am overtired. Of the great harvest I myself desired. Here we are. Here, nice little phrase. The great harvest. So you get a hyperbolic thing. It does have a religious sensibility and imagery to it. It connects back to that line about heaven early in the poem. And also we get that word desire. Life had a purpose for me. Life had reason. I desired the great harvest. I desired, it could be a religious thing, could be heaven. I desired wealth. I desired a full life, whatever it was, whatever the great harvest is in that way. And there you have another ambiguous turn of phrase with the word desire. Very interesting. There were 10,000 fruit to touch. Here we have some hyperbole. Excuse me. Life's huge. The years that have straddled behind me are therefore incalculable. 10,000. We get a description of a number that really doesn't engage properly with the way we would describe numbers. Cherish in hand, lift down, and not let fall, for all that struck the earth, no matter, if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the apple heap. Here we have the bad apples. There are the bad apples, as of no worth. Okay, so he could be actually referring to each person here, 10,000 fruit, each person in the great harvest I myself desired, all these people, and here are the bad apples that go off to the cider heap. We do have, of course, therefore, some religious imagery continuing. One can see what will trouble this sleep of mine. Here he is. Here am I one. Was I one of the bad apples? Am I one of these bruised, spiked, heading off to the cider heap? This is troubling me. This is giving me concern and pause. It is a relationship in terms of a romantic to the great literature, to Hamlet, right here. This is the troubled sleep of Hamlet in the To Be or Not to Be speech, where he says, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For what dreams may come must give us pause. This idea that I will die and my death is related to sleep, but if I sleep, I must dream. And if I dream, then I'm not truly dead. And my afterlife, if it is but a dream, concerns me, because I don't know if I've lived a fulfilled life. I desired it, but I left apples on the bough. I left some in the barrels. I didn't achieve everything I should have achieved. Has, in terms of the great harvest, where have I landed? Cider apples or apples for market? Were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it is like his long sleep, as I describe its coming on, or just some human sleep. Interesting one here at the end. This final ambiguous statement, what type of sleep I'm going into, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, and that is, of course, referring to hibernation, whether it is some kind of sleep where I go into this last phase of my life, hibernated. My life I don't do anything anymore. I go into my old age. I go into my dotage. I go into a sleep where my mind starts to decay. Is that what's happening to me? Or is this just a regular 8 hours with these dreams? I don't know yet. And I don't know how or why I feel this way. But I know that I'm done with this apple picking. Your question is, with a reasonably short poem, and in terms of the way in which this works, you can see rhythmically it's very different to the first poem you looked at. It is not broken into stanzas, but it is broken into a series of sort of ideas. Each sentence is a new idea, a new concept. And so to break this poem down in terms of rhythm and in terms of rhyme, there's a couple of rhymes here. You can see bow, now, right, night, glass grass, he is deliberately still using a rhythmical device to deliver tone and sensual meaning. So you need to sort of deconstruct issues there with what he's actually doing. And each sort of rhyme and each sort of rhythmical pattern is a different idea, is a different concept. And so at each moment you could sort of break this poem down and put lines through it as to where each little thought process happens. And then in the end, you've got to decide the type of discovery we're dealing with here. And I recommend we go back to the rubric and we actually say, okay, let's look at all these different sort of areas that they say there is types of discovery. So whilst we're at that rubric, and we go straight back to it after we've deconstructed the poem, we've worked out its meaning, we say, well, where does this relate? We look at this sort of first paragraph here, and we see discoveries can be fresh and intensely meaningful in ways that may be emotional, creative, intellectual, physical, or spiritual. And we do have an emotional and spiritual intensity in this poem. Into the way in which the persona is really going through some kind of change, and there is a discovering something new of the self, an imperfection perhaps, a sense of lack of achievement, a sense of failure. This person who once desired the great harvest is now wondering whether or not he is just one of the cider apples. Therefore, we have a confronting and very provocative idea. And this can lead us into new worlds. This leads us into this world of his strange sleep, and enable us to speculate about future possibilities. So there we are there. Really, this poem lives in those couple of sentences. Okay, going to, therefore, construct a response as to pulling that language out of the rubric, how this poem works with those few sentences. What is it that's actually going on here? And that's an interesting exercise to try. Is his persona literally moving into this new world? Is the world of sleep a completely new existence, a new plane of being? Or, as he said, is it just human sleep? Speculation, ambiguity. And in that speculation and ambiguity, you get this spiritual and emotional discovery of who I actually am. It becomes kind of existential. Okay, the second paragraph, an individual's discoveries and their process of discovering can vary according to all these contexts and values. So his value, of course, and we have this value, is the great harvest of which he desired, and the ladder pointing toward heaven, a value that many of us share, but still nonetheless socially constructed. Okay, and obviously it's interesting to go through the rest and start pulling this language out. This is what I recommend before we move on to the next poem that each of you try to manage to do in your work. See you in class.